I'm Jenna Miscavige. I was born and raised in Scientology. I left when I was 21 years old and wrote a book about it. My uncle, David Miscavige, is the leader of Scientology, and this is my YouTube channel. Hey guys, so this weekend I was reminiscing with a friend about growing up in Scientology, and we started talking about all of the procedures we had to do in order to get a day off as little kids. And I was like, oh my goodness, I need to do a video about that because it's actually kind of crazy looking back at it. So basically, if you don't already know, my parents were part of Scientology's most dedicated group, where they worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week. They wore military-style uniforms. They signed 1 billion-year contracts, basically pledging themselves lifetime after lifetime in servitude of Scientology. I actually didn't live in a home with my parents. I lived at a boarding school with about 85 other kids whose parents also worked at Scientology's International Management Headquarters. And basically, we were in training to be Sea Org members like our parents. So all of our activities, all of our schooling, all of the heavy labor that we did was all geared towards grooming us to be Sea Org members. So this boarding school called The Ranch was extremely regulated. It was run militaristically, and us kids there, we did 35 hours plus of manual labor every week. But specifically what I want to talk about here is what we had to do in order to get a day off, just because I feel like inside of that story, I can explain many other things that were going on that are crazy. So the Sea Organization where my parents worked was named the Sea Organization because when it first started, it was actually on a ship in the ocean, in the sea. And so there were lots of rituals in the Sea Org and thus at the ranch that were based on that. So because of this, there were about 85 kids at the ranch, and we were separated into two groups. One was port and one was starboard. And basically, port and starboard means like the left or right side of the ship. I honestly don't even remember which. But basically, one weekend would be labeled port, and one weekend would be labeled starboard, and it alternated port, starboard, port, starboard, port, starboard. So if I was port, I could only have a day off on a port weekend. And if someone else was starboard, they could only have a weekend off on a starboard weekend. Okay, so the first thing that had to be the case in order for us to have a day off was that it had to be our correct weekend, or starboard. All right, the second thing was that we each had jobs, and each job that we did was judged by a statistic that we had. And what I mean by that is, just say that my job was to lay bricks. And so I would have to keep track each week that if one week I laid 25 bricks, then the number would have to be higher the next week. It would have to be 30 bricks in order for me to have a day off. And this statistic was represented by me counting it and me marking it on a graph, which would have to be going up. So it had to be my weekend, either port or starboard. My statistic had to be up. And the next thing I had to do was get a replacement for all of the little duties that were assigned to me at the ranch. And basically, I had to get another kid to agree to cover me for certain things. So one of those things was my cleaning station. So after each meal, we had a cleaning station, and like mine, for instance, was mopping sometimes. So I had to get a kid to agree to mop for me that day, and they would have to sign their name on a piece of paper to agree to do that. And usually that involved me trading them. Like if they had a day off, then I would mop, or I would do their cleaning station for them, or it would mean I would do their cleaning station for them one day as well as my cleaning station. And so then they would be okay with doing both of our cleaning stations when I had a day off. The other thing I had to do in order to get a day off was to get a replacement for the duty that I had, which I had to do if there was ever a fire at the ranch. So my job, if there was a fire at the ranch, was to evacuate the big house, which meant I would have to go up to the big house and I would have to yell, "Fire, is anyone in here?" I would have to go to all of the floors in the room and I would have to basically evacuate anyone who was in there. And we would all have to go to this certain place in the ranch. So I had that duty, which is crazy that I had that sort of duty as a kid. But I would have to have someone agree to do my duty in case there was a fire. And that was called WQSB, which was short for Watch Quarter Station Bill. And it has something to do with being on a ship because of the Sea Org. But I had to get someone to agree to cover that for me. The next thing I had to do in order to have a day off as a kid is I had to have somebody replace me on my post. And all of the kids at the ranch had an assigned post. So my assigned duty for a while was to hand out vitamins to other kids. And basically it was just like a little packet that I would put on their plate in the morning. It usually had vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, vitamin D, a few other vitamins. And it was also my duty to ask all of the kids at the ranch if they were ill in any way and then make a note of it. And then basically there was a book of Scientology procedures that you could give to kids, that you could do on kids that had a certain illness or something like that. Like, so for instance, if a kid had a cold, there was a Scientology procedure, which is sort of like talk therapy or something like that. But in Scientology, we believed that if you had a cold, it was because you had a loss. You lost something and that you were kind of grieving it. Like maybe you lost your dog or you, I don't know, lost your candy bar. I don't know, whatever things they think that a kid could have lost. So it was my job to sit with the kid and be like, and perform this Scientology assist on them, where I would basically ask the question to them over and over, "Tell me something you haven't lost lately." And so they would be like, "Oh, well, I guess I still have my shoes." And I guess it was just like supposed to remind them of all the things they still had. So doing all of these things were my job, were my post. And in order for me to have a day off, I had to get somebody to agree to cover for me. And usually that would be the kid who was my senior. And so I would have to ask my senior to cover those duties for me for that day. And those duties were something that I would do before breakfast in the morning. So it would be between 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. And so I had to make sure those were covered. Okay, so once I had all of my replacements lined up, I would then have to write a request, which was called the CSW, and that is short for completed staff work. And it basically just means I have completed all the work so that you don't have to worry about having any of my jobs covered. I have taken care of it and I want to have a day off, and this won't be a problem for you at all because I have everything covered. And so I would write this up and it would have to get approved through many people. So even as kids in Scientology, we had an org chart, and I'm going to draw it out. Okay, so this might come up backwards, but basically every org chart in Scientology, including ones for little children, have 7 divisions. And it starts at 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? And each one of these divisions has a head. So there's Division 1 head, Division 2, Division 3, etc. And we were categorized into all of these divisions as kids. Okay, so there is one boss that's in charge of Division 712. I'm just going to write boss. So there's one boss there. And there's another boss that's in charge of 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then on top of those bosses, there's the big boss. And that's called the commanding officer. So believe it or not, we had a child at the ranch whose job was called commanding officer. And every kid in these divisions and here called this person sir. Even if they were a little kid, even if they were 12 years old, they would call that person sir. Or If their name was Joey Smith, they would be called Mr. Smith. Even if the kid here was 6 years old, this was still Mr. Smith. All kids who were lower called this person sir, and Mr. Sir or Mr. whatever their last name was. And so at the time when my job was handing out vitamins, I was in Division 5, right? So here's me. So in order to get a day off, I had to get it approved by the head of Division 5, and then it had to get approved through this boss, and then it had to get approved through this boss. All these people were kids, by the way. So I had to send a written request to this person, and this person, and then one other person. This person was an adult, and they were called the cadet coordinator. So then it would have to go to this person as well. So in order to have a day off, I had to get it approved by this person, and this person, and this person. That's 4 people. And they all had to sign off on the piece of paper and sign that it was approved for me to take that day off. Our statistics were measured week to week, and the week ended on Thursday at 2 o'clock. So basically we had the rest of Thursday to submit the request and Friday and Saturday to get it approved by all of these people. But technically, the way that the Scientology dispatch system works is that these people have at least 24 hours to answer a dispatch. So you kind of had to beg and plead people to do it quickly, more quickly than they were even required to by policy. And so you kind of also had to be in good with all of these people. All right, so when we did finally get approved for a day off, we didn't have a car. We didn't have any transportation, and our parents also did not have a day off. So basically the day off kind of consisted of us being at the ranch, and there was a room where we could watch movies, and whatever movies happened to be there, we would watch those. And usually it was the same movie over and over again, which sounds kind of crappy, but to be honest, at the time it was like, if we could watch a movie at all, it was like a huge treat. Yeah, and it basically consisted of wandering around the ranch, and yeah, there wasn't really anywhere to go or anything to do. And so it was just enjoying a day of not working or not having to do studies. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So kind of while the rest of the world is having all of summer off, having summer vacation, and kids are having weekends off, we basically had to go through all of those little steps in order to get a day off. Just to summarize again, it has to be our right weekend, either port or starboard. We have to have a replacement for our cleaning station, a replacement for our watch quarter station bill. We have to have our statistics be up. We have to get it approved through at least 4 people. And then after that, we can have a day off where we can't really go anywhere. We can just stay at the ranch. It wasn't like we could go down the street and go to our neighbor's house where they maybe had a slip and slide or play video games, because we didn't have any neighbors. We were at the back of an Indian reservation, and like we didn't really even have toys at the ranch or anything like that. So I was at the ranch from when I was 6 to 12 years old, and that's sort of how it was in order to have a day off. And then from when I was 12 until I was 18, basically, I remained in the Sea Org myself. I became a Sea Org member. And once again, we had to go through all of those steps in order to have a day off. I know it seems like a small point, but it's something that I had not thought about for a long time. And when I look back on it, it's just kind of crazy. And when I look at my kids' lives now, it just seems insane that we had to do all of that in order just to have a little time off. And honestly, not even with our parents. And it's just another example of Scientology controlling people's lives. And when it's like that for you, the whole time you're a kid, you really just don't know any different. So even though Sea Org members are considered religious volunteers, the fact that they have to go through all of these procedures just to simply have a day off including if you're a kid who's 15 years old working for Scientology. That's pretty crazy. That's not right. That's not freedom. So I just wanted to bring attention to this Scientology practice because it shouldn't be legal, and that should not be happening to kids. And yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. All right, guys, thank you for listening. Don't forget to check out Sins of Scientology on YouTube. And if you haven't already read my book, you can find it on Amazon. It's called Beyond Belief, My Secret Life Inside Scientology and My Harrowing Escape. All right, have a great day. See you next time. Bye.